Let me introduce our special guest, and as people gather in, as we gather around the campfire again in our wonderful campsite that we live down here, I'm excited about Kathleen's presentation. As you have heard me earlier, she last year gave a presentation that it was one of those things where everybody in the room wished that more people get to hear it. So I'm excited that not only do we have a larger audience, but we also have people joining us online through live stream. And once again, if I've noticed Dave Harkins and others who are hearing certain things in the conference that are resonating with them, and they're tweeting it out and putting hashtag #SustainableBSA, I welcome you to do that same thing. We had a breakout session last year with Kathleen. We also had a conversation on millennials and generational differences last year. That was, as I mentioned, one of the highlights of the conference. And I really think as we move forward and have this conversation about sustainability and scouting, we have to look at our relevance to society and our relevance to the youth culture that we're trying to engage. And Kathleen's company, Label Networks, has incredible research, and I continue. It's one of the few research reports when they do their annual sustainability study, but also their spring and their youth study, or their spring and their fall youth study. It's just enjoyable reading, and I'll sit there and go through everything and just carry it with me when I travel. Kathleen herself is an expert on global youth culture marketing, research, and branding strategies. She is also the co-founder and senior vice president of Label Networks, which gathers global youth culture intelligence to help create unique branding strategies for clients ranging from Apple Computer to Adidas Originals. Formerly, Gasperini served in editorial roles for a number of leading youth culture magazine titles, including the senior editor of Powder and Snowboarder magazines, and as the editor of Women's Sports and Fitness. She was the technical writer for the IMAX movie Extreme, and is the co-founder and nonprofit youth-focused foundation Boarding for Breast Cancer, for which she received a humanitarian award from the Snow Sports Industries of America. She's somebody that I love to just listen to, and every time I'm around you, I always pick up something new. So please welcome to the stage Kathleen Gasperini.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Thanks. Thank you very much for inviting me to come present today. I appreciate it, Boy Scouts of America and John Stewart, for having us back again to share some of our latest findings and some information that we think that you'll find quite valuable and exciting and important. To start with, though, I want to talk about why we started moving into the direction of sustainability. 3 to 4 years ago, I was at a sustainability summit, and there was a lot of global brands there, Coca-Cola, BP, Motorola, and Hewlett-Packard, among others. And we heard a lot of talk that they didn't think that millennials or young people cared about the environment. They were completely out of touch with the reality of what was going on. And so we thought, this is a scary moment when we've got global leaders here who actually don't even know that A, young people care, but even worse, B, they're already doing something about it. So this lack of connection was what spurred us to start doing some more research. And in the last 3 years, we've surveyed 30,000 13 to 25-year-olds across the United States about issues of sustainability, humanitarian concerns, and so on. So some of the first things that we discovered, for example, is that we call them the sustainables. This is a new generation that is grown up with recycling as a part of their lifestyle. There's a seismic shift taking place right now, and we deal with a lot of different brands that actually haven't seen this coming, and they work in core youth culture marketplaces as well. So what we put together is our research studies in a way that we can show it to the marketplace and specific brands and organizations, so they can get a sense of not only how much the youth market cares, but what exactly are some of the things that they're doing. And what we've discovered is that issues of sustainability have awakened a very DIY spirit, do-it-yourself, EIY, earn-it-yourself kind of culture among young people. And this is a very big shift in the way that people perceive the youth marketplace today. So what we want to do today, what I want to do is just to take you through some of these elements to hopefully to encourage and inspire you. See through the eyes of new. We always talk about seeing through a different lens, through the eyes of a young person, just for the next 20 to 25 minutes. And then learn from some of the data results about this entrepreneurial spirit that I'm talking about. And then go into a couple of case studies of some brands and organizations that are doing amazing things when it comes to issues of sustainability. First, though, let's just take a step back and understand who 13 to 25-year-olds are today. They're the most diverse generation in history of the United States. The fastest growing demographic is Latino. That population is growing the fastest. And 22 of the top metropolitan areas are now considered majority minority. So what we're talking about is a very unique and different type of landscape than ever before. The DIY aesthetics, or do-it-yourself aesthetics, of this 56 million people within this age group it's flipped traditional business models on their heads. Trends and ideas and opportunities are coming from the bottom up rather than the top down. So basically, this has really been a challenge for global leaders in terms of their thinking, because this demographic is the one that's leading a lot of different trends with their own types of ideas. The fastest growing, or the largest population today, is the demographic between 18 to 20-year-olds. And what's significant about noticing this is that if you think about an 18, 19, 20-year-old today, and if the official recession began in 2008, then this is a demographic that's gone through their entire teens in a recession. Their thinking, their spending patterns, what's important to their lifestyles has completely changed. What we think of things like success, hope, and happiness, for example. And it's had a great ripple effect on the global economy. There's a new movement towards doing things smarter, doing things good. There's the shadows of a savings culture among this generation. We've measured things like state of mind and happiness, and what is it that means happiness to them. It used to be, when we started doing a lot of our information and research, like say 5, even 10 years ago, happiness and success meant things like making a lot of money when I grow up. And now it's things like, I hope I have a job I love when I get older. Or I hope I find somebody that shares my passion for the lifestyle that I've chosen. So let's take a look at some of the research results from the youth perspective of the state of mind of the environment. Some of the questions that we ask, they go across a broad range of different things, but we start with the basic question of proving that they do care about the environment. We ask generally, are you worried about the state of the environment? And 85% overall is concerned about the environment in some level. And what's significant about this is that this percentage has grown 20% in just the last 3 years alone. So you have a new demographic of teens who are actually very aware of the environment and even more concerned than ever before. What's interesting to note, however, is that the percentages that are very much concerned about the environment are always higher among females. And the demographic that is the most concerned about the environment tends to be 15 to 17-year-olds. This is something I think that is an opportunity and a challenge for the Boy Scouts of America, because it's interesting that in the last 3 to 4 years of us looking primarily at sustainability research, young girls are leading the way. They're leading the ideas, and they're coming up with new ways of tackling issues. However, it's easy to see now, though, that obviously young people really do care, and they want to make a difference. When asked about what do you consider eco-friendly or sustainable, for example, we went through a series of different things that young people do. Like, what do you think what do you do that you think is considered sustainable? Also keeping in mind that word sustainable, you can't necessarily bring that up in a question to, say, a 13, 14-year-old. Sometimes they don't know what that word is. So we have to phrase it in a way that they understand. But when we ask what you consider is the most eco-friendly or sustainable thing that you've done, number one is recycle plastics in bottles at 74.5%. If you think about this, especially for older demographics in the audience today, this demographic grew up with parents who recycled. So it's not just, they grew up with recycling. They're the next generation of people who are already recycling. Another interesting thing is turn off the lights when not in a room. Their awareness of energy and consumption is very different than it was just 3 to 5 years ago. Things like wear shoes a little bit longer or wear my clothes a little bit longer. We've seen a tremendous growth in shopping at vintage thrift stores and looking at quality over brand name in terms of fashion. Recycle my electronics is another interesting thing because this is a tech-savvy audience. They live a digital lifestyle, and they are concerned about what happens to their electronics once they move or upgrade to the next thing. And then finally, I'll get into a little bit more about this at the end. It's things like driving less, riding my bike, skateboarding for transportation purposes. When asked about what's the last eco-friendly or sustainable product that you purchased, energy-efficient light bulbs almost always comes to the top. But this has increased again another 5% since the last couple of years. Organic food's interesting to note because that wasn't really even on the radar that much in just 4 years ago, and this is something that continues to increase. But Tom's Shoes is important to note, and if you want an example out there of who's doing some incredible things when it comes to influencing the youth marketplace, it's Tom's Shoes. It's the only brand that's actually named, that young people name in the top 20. Their one-for-one program is something that's embedded into their business model, and it's something that young people have gravitated towards. And now they're doing a one-for-one campaign with eyewear as well. When we are asking about what concerns you the most about the environment, the results are very interesting because saving wildlife is something, if you can notice on the over in the corner, that's the highest piece right there. Saving wildlife at 66.1%, it's almost always the number one concern that young people have. And that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily think would be the number one thing. They think it would be greener oceans or rivers or cleaner cities. But wildlife tends to be the first introduction in terms of sustainability issues in the environment. And it's almost always higher the younger the age group. So 13 to 14-year-olds will always say wildlife in higher percentages. And then as they get older, it's things like fossil fuels and so on. The other thing to know is organic farming. It's at 31.2%. It may not seem that high, but if you've seen the research in the last 2 to 3 years, it wasn't really even that high on the radar at all. So this is changing the model of agriculture in terms of young people purposely reading labels and wanting to buy organic products and seeking them out and telling their parents about it too. We have a lot of stories where young people will say, I'm the one that took my parents to the organic section of the grocery store. Or they're the ones that say, I'm the one that taught my parents how to read labels in terms of what we're buying, what we're shopping for. When we go into things like alternative energy sources, what sort of programs do you think the United States should be first to do? It's interesting to note that solar energy it's increased tremendously, but the younger the age group, the higher the percentages that say solar energy is the first thing the United States should take a look at when it comes to renewables. So, just think about it this way. You've got a 13, 14-year-old now who's saying, oh yeah, we should definitely be looking into solar. I mean, 10 years ago, you wouldn't have had a teenager that aware or that broad-minded or even thinking in that capacity of understanding what solar energy even is. So if that person becomes, in a few years, moves into their 20s, moves into their 30s and 40s, the reality is this kid's grown up with thinking about solar energy, and they're going to do something about it if they're not doing it already. Energy consumption is ingrained in their thinking patterns. And we see this also with influencing sports in a great deal, which I'm going to talk about in just a few minutes here as well. But the concept of conservation is in the mindset of the youth marketplace today. But here's a real problem. And it's a wake-up call to sustainability brands and industries and organizations. Because when we ask, do you think that companies are actually making a change? Or are they just saying it's green? Do you think that's just false advertising, greenwashing? And those percentages are skyrocketing, especially among younger demographics and males who think that when a company says they're going green, it's not true. And this is a really hard wake-up call for everybody to be vigilant in terms of looking at when a brand says that they're going green, to make sure it's in their DNA. Because the youth marketplace can smell anything that smacks of insincerity a mile away. And when one brand goes down that road and says that they're going green and they aren't really, and young people find out, it ruins it for the rest of us. So this is just a shout out to, make sure you watch what other brands and organizations are doing and be vigilant about making sure that they are transparent in their actions. Let's take a look at how sustainability relates to their lifestyles. Sometimes we look at, we do quite a bit with fashion brands as well, and we look at fashion because it's easier for certain people to see this correlation with how it fits into their lifestyles by looking at apparel, fashion, footwear, accessories, and that kind of thing. So when we talked about fashion and their awareness of, say, eco-friendly fabrics or where a product is made, it's now at 42% that young people say, I'm more aware of eco-friendly fashion than I was a year ago. What's remarkable about this is this continues to double every year, that percentage. So they not only know about it, but there's an also growing percentage of young people who say, not only do I seek it out, but I also try to buy it if I can, or I try to tell my parents to buy it if I can. This is something that's changing spending patterns, and it's completely flipped the fashion and footwear industry on its head. We work with a lot of brands ranging from Tom's to, say, Vans shoes, and you've got some of these brands who are scrambling to try to be sustainable or come back around and say that they are sustainable in some way because they're realizing they've lost traction already with the very demographic that they think they have captured. It's shopping with a cause. It's caring about what you buy and put on your back. It's caring that the brand actually represents who you are in terms of your style and in terms of where you're going to spend your precious dollars, remembering that they did grow up through a recession. So their spending patterns are different, and they're going to look at things that are in a different sort of way, for example. It's what we call the handmade nation. There's actually a book out about a handmade nation where it's going back to craftivism as activism. And this is something that obviously the Boy Scouts of America could capitalize on in terms of the maker, what we call maker cultures, in terms of looking at crafts and looking at handmade products and looking at caring about building your own item, your own fashion, your own footwear, for example, and having it as your rebel cause. Doing it as a movement, as something that you care about. This has also opened up the door for niche brands. And a lot of younger brands, young people, for example, in their early 20s or 30s, part of that DIY generation, they're looking at sustainability and seeing actually the opportunities of where they see holes in the marketplace and can come up with their own brand that can tap into what the new youth marketplace is looking for and wants. One of the aspects that we also put into different buckets are different cultural traits, urban influences. There's a strong trend still going on for things like Americana. Where is the product made? We're seeing the percentages for Made in America continue to increase by 10-15% each year, where young people are saying they want it to be made in America or they hope it's made in America. If not, they want to know they're looking into fair trade practices and distribution. And they're very aware about this. This has also increased things like preferences in terms of things like camo patterns, Native American patterns, looking at heritage brands like Woolrich again, revisiting Levi Strauss as the original for workwear and but also as a fashion statement as well. We also see this in terms of transportation and what we call commuter culture. There's a lot of brands that are moving into the marketplace and making apparel and footwear and accessories for a new generation that's interested in getting off of fossil fuels and getting to and from a location, whereby the journey is just as important as actually getting there on time. It used to be in car culture, you get there as fast as you possibly can because you don't want to waste time. There's a shift going on where your ride and what it looks like and how you're getting there is almost just as important as actually getting to your destination. So we see this in terms of the rise of what we call fixie culture, fixed gear bikes, the rise in skateboarding, longboard skateboarding in particular, for using it as a form of transportation, for example. We've also seen this in a variety of different sports like parkour, looking at your urban landscape as a urban jungle and something fun, something as an adventure to take advantage of. It's a new sort of outdoors. We also see that utilitarian is very important in fashion. It's interesting. We work with a lot of European brands, and there are brands like Carhartt, which is originally workwear, Dickies, for example, as well, or Timberland. And in Europe, those are considered high-end products. It's almost 3 times as expensive as it is in the United States. So we're seeing this whole movement too, where things like workwear, activewear in the United States are having a ripple effect across the globe and being used in different ways. Again, it's rebels with a cause. It's things like the People's Climate March, where a huge percentage of people in New York City at the People's Climate March were young people. How many people, does anyone here go to the People's Climate March in New York? I'm just curious. Or watched it on TV. I mean, it was a huge, huge movement. And if you saw the footage of it, there's a vast majority were young people. Urban in the outdoors. I touched on this just for a bit, but what does the outdoors really mean? Sometimes we work with organizations, say, for example, Outdoor Retailer, SIA, Snow Industries of America, and sometimes they forget that how did they get introduced to the outdoors? What does the outdoors mean to somebody who maybe has never even been anywhere other than their local park in their city? You have to understand the mindset of a person who maybe has no access to the outdoors per se, but actually looks at going to their local park as being in the outdoors. They might say, walking my dog. Yeah, I'm pretty active outdoors. I walk my dog 3 times a day. And it's not a joke to them. They really truly think that they're an outdoor person. So it's taking that step and reintroducing what the outdoors actually means to a lot of young people and realizing where they actually live. We see this also with sports like skiing and snowboarding, where urban snowboarding and urban skiing are growing faster than young people actually going to resorts. And why is that? It's freaking out the resorts, of course, but it's too expensive to go to resorts. And they're looking at their backyard landscape and hill or this or that. They're building kickers and they're filming themselves with their GoPros and everything else and cell phones, putting it up on YouTube and doing it over and over and over again, having the time of their life. So it's taking a step back and understanding what the outdoors means to a new generation and how it can be expanded upon if you understand how young people may be looking at it from different cultures and different areas of the country. It's a bike to work generation. The tribes of urban cyclists are increasing, and what we show here are some interesting brands like Vespertine or Beta Brand. They come from crowdsourced funding, Kickstarter campaigns. They look at building and designing apparel and reflective gear, for example, in a fashionable way, and using it as a new source for their own DIY, EIY spirit. And then to have a sense of humor. Sometimes we can get so serious, we're in the outdoors camping, you got to survive and all that. But there's brands like Polar, for example, and Air Blaster have just did this really cool collaboration called Ninja Vibes. And, this guy's wearing an old school merino wool first layer piece, but they put together this marketing campaign that's absolutely hilarious where, he's like a ninja. He's having fun out in the outdoors, and they're trying to bring back that whole stay wild, be fun, get out there. And yet they're using it in a way that has sustainability at its very essence, because the fabric that is used for this particular outfit, for example, is recycled and renewable. It's a nod to the old school, but with a sense of modern realization of what the youth marketplace is all about today. I want to talk about a couple of examples of what some organizations and some events are actually doing when it comes to sustainability and where this is going. And one reason we talk about action sports a lot, surf, skate, snow, is because, not just because that's my particular background, but because those sports are the ones that resonate with young people the most. Every time we ask about which sports would you most like to learn, surf, skate, snow are almost always in the top 3. They're higher in percentages among females than males for the last 10 years. And yet you've got industries like skate that still concentrate mostly on guys. Missed opportunity there. But my point is that it's these types of sports, too, that young people are attracted to and are pulled to. And these types of sports are actually the leaders when it comes to looking at sustainability in terms of their events, in terms of how they manufacture products, like skateboarding brands making recycled boards and looking into that. It's like Sustainable Surf, for example, which is a great organization. I'd check it out if I were you, sustainablesurf.org, that makes surfboards out of recycled styrofoam from packaging materials of electronics. They're looking at turning events like the Volcom U.S. Open of Surfing, for example, into a sustainable event platform whereby it's no trace left on the beach and looking at the ocean environment. Protect Our Winters. It's looking at the winter, looking at water usage and what's going on with keeping skiing and snowboarding a happy place. And so a lot of these youth culture and action sports companies and brands are some of the leaders in setting guidelines for sustainability. Finally, I would just want to wrap up here to talk about music, because music is the connector. Across gender, across age, across ethnicity, across religion. Music is has an emotional response. It's the vortex of all culture, and it's something that young people look at and want to emulate. And then this is the medium for the message. If you want to get a message out there, almost always the best way to do it is to associate in some way through some sort of musical platform. Whether it be a festival, a music tour, a one-off event, something of your own, clubs, you name it. And I was asked to put together the sustainability strategy for the Warped Tour. We work with the Warped Tour for the last 15 years. It's the longest-running, biggest music tour in the world. It attracts 750,000 13 to 25-year-olds every summer. It crosses the United States and Canada. And if we can do a sustainability strategy for the Warped Tour, then it's going to raise the bar. It's going to become the blueprint for music festivals and tours across the board. It's already pressuring Live Nation. They're already a little bit upset about this sustainability program in this. But what we also found out is when we asked young people, where do you find out about various nonprofits? Where do you find out about certain humanitarian issues that they may not have known of, or sustainability issues? A lot of people are saying, I found out because I went to this event and they had a nonprofit village in there, and I walked around and I got all sorts of information from things like Crochet Kids or Feed Our Children Now. And I could skip the line if I brought in my old cell phone. I could go backstage if I supplied some canned food for the local food bank for Feed Our Children Now. I could volunteer and pick up 20 water bottles, and then that meant I could go get an autograph from XYZ. And sometimes this has been the way that they've been introduced to sustainability and eco programs, and this is growing. Rockstar Mayhem, for example, gives back to the vets, invites vets up on stage with the musicians. Global Inheritance, they have great programs at Coachella and Bonnaroo, for example, that have like a hamster wheel where people can get in the hamster wheel and run, and everybody takes photos of each other, and it's super fun, and it powers the solar stage for another 10 minutes, so you can get 10 more minutes of your favorite music. It's things like stationary bikes that are out there in the field where at some of these festivals where you can hop on the bike to charge your phone. It's coming up with fun sustainability strategies that it could also be the first time that young people have actually even considered it. So these are some key youth culture lifestyles, and looking at the changes in sports in terms of issues of transportation and why they're changing, new sports that are coming up on the horizon and growing because of issues of sustainability, and brands and organizations using that as a platform for change and to connect with the youth marketplace, the digital lifestyle of the youth marketplace in terms of how they can easily go from different platforms, mobile phone to computer to laptop and so on, is spread awareness and allowed people to communicate in different ways. And then the DIY, EIY factor of this generation. They're not going to wait. They're not going to stand by and think that, oh, everything's going to be all right, because they rank things like politicians, their teachers, and their parents as not the greatest influences in terms of sustainability in their lifestyle. They feel like they are the ones that are going to be the change agents. And when you're young, change isn't that scary. When you get older is when change gets worse. When you're young, you're already going through change, and change is actually a motivating factor. Discovery is a motivating factor. So just once in a while when you're thinking about sustainability, stop for a moment and think with the eyes of new. Think between the spaces, because there's opportunity there. Obviously, the Boy Scouts of America is sitting on the greatest opportunity the organization has probably had in its entirety. You could be at the forefront of all of this and the leaders of this movement, and just getting the message out to others that you are the ones taking up the reins because you've been there from the very beginning. Thank you very much.
Good job. Kathleen, I don't believe you've met Zach Carson yet, who's on our sustainability team, but for 10 years, Zach did the Sustainable Living Roadshow and did the tour, and Zach, way back there, I want to make sure you two connect, and would be interested in your research. Are there any questions for Kathleen before she slips away, by chance? I know we don't have a microphone, so I'll repeat the question for those online.
I would love for you to talk more about their definition of the outdoors, and specifically, I guess,
Come back up.
what are they really considering that? What are they interested in? Is it wilderness? Is it park camping? Where do you see that going?
It's not.
Come to the microphone just for people who are online.
Am I on mic?
There you are on mic. There you go.
It's not necessarily the outdoors like you may think of it as, because you're coming from, a space of the outdoors. And Boy Scouts, obviously, you've got a head start. You already know the outdoors. So if you look at the population as a whole, like I was saying, their sense of sports and their sense of the outdoors is incredibly different than what you may think it is. For example, hiking doesn't rank very high in terms of sports that they like to do. But snowboarding does, even though they may snowboard once in their entire lives, because it's something that they think they want to identify with that culture and that lifestyle. So it's going back to the roots and figuring out a way to reintroduce some of these outdoor activities in a way that resonates with their lifestyles. Like I was saying, looking at the urban jungle through things like parkour, and looking at cycling is one of those crossover areas of getting people into the outdoors. Even yoga, rock climbing, indoor rock climbing is another entry point into getting people into the outdoors, because that's often can be their first introduction. You have to remember that the majority of young people do live in urban areas, not necessarily in rural. But the advantage of being a digital lifestyle, digital generation, is that they love watching YouTube videos. They love watching what other people are doing and think, you know what, I'm going to go do that. I'm going to go buy that gear, and I'm going to go up my back hill right here. I'm just going to go try to snowboard or try to ski or try to do whatever it is that they're seeing in different types of media. So there is an opportunity there.
Well, and I will say, Kathleen, I've heard her speak also at the Outdoor Industry Association at their retailer show. And one big thing in the outdoor industry that's happening right now is the outdoorsy customer, that may not actually be in the outdoors, but they call it the suburban white girl uniform, which is the Uggs and the North Face jacket. And, when North Face designed that jacket, did they really design it for a high school kid in Iowa to wear? However, that's the majority of their market for those jackets and the Ugg boots and everything else. But there's an outdoorsy feel. And we've also noticed through scouting how a gadget, that whether they buy it at Scout Supply or at REI, that a new, whether it be a GoPro on top of their head or, some new headlamp or some sort of a new lantern, gets kids deeper in the outdoors. They want to take their technology and they want to take their gadgets and they want to take, their technology into the outdoor environment.
And they want to record it, do selfies, and then promote it. That's part of the whole, which is great, which is a great way for anyone to promote the outdoors in a different way. But you have to think of their digital lifestyle and how they're going to promote it instead of thinking that, oh, they're going to do it via TV. For example, they don't watch TV, just to be clear about that. They really don't watch TV. And they're looking at their personal computers, they're looking at their personal electronic devices. So say, for example, ads on TV that promote the outdoors, your money would be better off spent actually doing a series of cool video clips in a contest, that they are creating, self-created from them. And also, like John was saying, so we go to a lot of different trade shows and even fashion trade shows, like streetwear trade shows like Agenda or Liberty Fairs. And what's interesting about those is now there's whole areas for like glamorous glamping. There's areas for survival gear that's part of the really cool high-end denim. Swiss Army is at Agenda, I mean, this is an opportunity for accessories and gear to reach a different type of marketplace. And okay, maybe they're not considered core because they only go camping once a year, but man, they're looking good, So it's a different sensibility too of embracing all different types of people who maybe get introduced to the outdoors because they bought a really cool Woolrich flannel shirt. And then they're thinking, oh, look at that story. Oh, I didn't know that the Beach Boys, wore flannel shirts when they were out on the beach, And I mean, sometimes fashion and accessories and footwear can get people into the next sport instead of just the other way around.
Well, it's also why we are very concentrated on making sure we have the right brands as well. I mean, kids buy brands, and brands mean something. And I think about Jansport. I went to the Agenda show and walked, and you have all these skate brands, and you do see those iconic brands. And those of us in scouting know Skip Yole, because the founder of Jansport, because he loves Philmont. He hikes there. That's where he tests product and all. Technically works on the product, but then it's a very hot, popular backpack within the skate culture.
Yeah.
And you look at the importance of us stocking brands, promoting brands, having brands that are aligned, that when youth go to the summer camp or when they go to the summit and they go to our high adventure bases, when they see these cutting edge brands, that it's important for the youth for relevance to the program. So any other questions before Kathleen? Yes,
Yeah.
Rabbi Hyman.
Quick question. I've been intrigued when I go to New York or D.C. or
Yeah.
larger cities, you reference people on bikes and people skateboarding as transportation. What do we do? How do we affect has there been any movement to affect the city, municipality infrastructure?
Oh yeah, there's huge, and that's a movement coming from young people, from people who are demanding change and saying, hey, you know what, better make downtown LA bike friendly at least once a month. That's happening. Actually, the Velo movement in Paris, for example, the stationary bikes where you can rent a bike, ride, and then drop it off at another rack, that kind of thing. New York City,
and Boston,
exactly.
and Chicago.
All of that started from young people saying, hey, you know what, I need an alternative to owning a car, to being in a car, or and so it's really changed the automotive industry as well. But yeah, in fixie bike culture, especially in the Latino marketplace, where caring about your ride. Does people know what the fixie bikes are?
Yeah.
They're the kinds. Yeah, okay. They're the kinds of bikes that maybe don't necessarily have brakes. They used to be used as a racing vehicle. I mean, they can be really high end and expensive. And you've got a lot like these tribes of cyclists who care about what they're wearing, and they're really good cyclists, and they're purposely going around that's how they get around the city. And this is really taking off with the Hispanic community, and it's something to note. The amount of bike shops in downtown LA, it's tripled in the last year alone, and that's just in LA. And I know New York obviously is a hub of that.
I know where I live, this little tiny city, city planning has begun to put in bike paths.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great. I just thought, the larger cities, when you get a cab, New York.
Yeah, that's a youth. That came from the youth.
Well, and what's interesting is, I mean, you talk about bikes. The CEO of Trek one time told us, he sat and said, I care about two things. And one is childhood health and obesity. And the second one is climate change. He said the Boy Scouts of America are uniquely positioned to help us in both of those battles.
Yes.
And typically what happens is, when a kid stops riding the bike, it's also when the kid there's a propensity for him to leave the scouting program, and they don't revisit again until they're out of college, until they have kids, until they reenter. And so the cycling industry as a whole is one that we will continue to partner with, and because they are around every time somebody's riding a bike, it's better for the environment, it's better for the health of that person riding the bike. In closing, I do want to say, I mean, just your research has continued to help us I think about last year, and the people who were here last year remember John Clark, who is our general manager of the Philmont Scout Ranch and also runs all of our outdoor bases. He was talking about the recycling program and everything they do out at Philmont. And he said one of the big things they had to do is they had to trust their younger staff to do it. And I think that's the thing within scouting, within wherever we are in leadership positions in our company, outside of scouting, that it's important for us to unleash the youth in this area. And this is an area where, for a lot of us with gray hair and with no hair, for us to trust a youth in this area is a fantastic area.
Yeah,
so I
it's a great
appreciate your
opportunity.
research because it helps us, continue to realize that this is a generation that is marked with certain aspects and personalities just because of the way they were brought up.
And I just want one note on that too, as we work a lot with the Olympics, and they've changed a lot. They've got new people in there, which is fantastic. And talk about an organization that's the Titanic in terms of turning around. But they used to market the Olympics, try to get young people interested in the Olympics by saying, "Hey, it's a healthy lifestyle. It's good for your health." Forgetting the fact that a 15-year-old could really care less because they're immortal. They're young. They're not necessarily thinking about, heart disease, I'm 13, no. So remembering the message and the marketing around living an active lifestyle is really important because the Olympics missed it for years, and they're trying to make up ground now by relooking at their marketing and relooking at how they engage young people to actually care about the Olympic movement.
So good. All right, so we're going to put an end to it there. Kathleen is
Thank
here.
you.
She has traveled. She's another person that came from the West Coast and got to spend a lot of time in Dulles Airport for a flight that got canceled, and I had the phone call around midnight that she was still 4 hours away. So I appreciate her sacrifice to be here, but she will be here for a conversation after this time.